If you watched our video on the Obidient Movement Civil War, you remember exactly where we left this story. Isaac Fayose prayed with Seyi Tinubu, threatened to walk away from Peter Obi entirely, and told his critics, in his own words, that Obi had never even properly appreciated everything he sacrificed since 2023. We told you to watch what happened next. Here is what happened. On Thursday night, Fayose met President Tinubu's son, Seyi Tinubu, alongside socialite Pascal Okechukwu, known to millions as Cubana chief priest, someone else this channel has covered in depth. A video of the three men praying together went viral. Obidient supporters accused Fayose of being financially compromised. Fayose fired back publicly, defending his loyalty and reminding critics exactly what he had given up for Obi's campaign since 2023. Then, less than 24 hours later, Peter Obi personally called him, and on Saturday, July 18, 2026, Obi did something even more significant. He physically visited Isaac Fayose at his residence in Abuja. In the video Fayose himself posted, Obi is seen sitting with him, addressing the backlash directly. He said, quote, "Half of the people that abused you don't follow us. What they do is hire people to call others all sorts of names," end quote. He went further, saying, quote, "Anytime I'm doing something wrong, I want people to tell me so I can correct myself. A leader must always listen and learn," end quote. Fayose responded by declaring on camera that he remained 100% obedient. The civil war Bwala predicted just weeks earlier appears to have been shut down in under 3 days, not through online statements, but through one physical visit. Today we're going to break down exactly what happened and what it tells us about how Obi is actually managing his coalition. Stay with me. If you are new to the ThePolicyPulseHQ, this channel connects the dots other channels rush past. Subscribe now, watch the full breakdown here on this channel. This short only gave you half the story. And stay with me because this is the resolution to a story we broke down for you weeks ago. From the prayer video to the personal visit, let us go through exactly what happened, in the order it happened, because the speed of Obi's response is itself part of the story. On Thursday night, July 16, 2026, Isaac Fayose met with Seyi Tinubu and Cubana chief priest in Abuja. A video circulated showing the three men praying together for President Tinubu, for themselves and for the country. Given Fayose's public association with Obi's campaign since 2023, and given that Cubana chief priest, whose own political ambitions in Imo State we covered extensively on this channel, is a known Tinubu supporter, the optics of that gathering immediately triggered backlash from Obidient supporters online, some accusing Fayose of being financially compromised by the meeting. Fayose did not stay quiet. He responded in his own viral video, dismissing the allegations and condemning his critics directly. He specifically pointed to the sacrifices he had made toward Obi's presidential ambition since 2023, framing the online attacks as deeply unfair given his track record of loyalty. According to Fayose's own account, shared in a video posted Friday night, July 17, Peter Obi called him personally, hours after the backlash intensified, specifically to appreciate his support and to promise he would visit him. Fayose, responding to that call, reiterated that despite being what he described as a family friend of President Tinubu, he remained fully committed to Obi's political movement. Then, on Saturday, July 18, Obi followed through. He traveled to Fayose's residence in Abuja in person. Fayose shared the video himself on his Instagram page, showing the two men in a relaxed, direct conversation. Obi addressed the controversy head-on rather than avoiding it, and Fayose used the moment to reaffirm his position publicly and unambiguously, declaring himself 100% obedient and referring to Obi as, in his words, our incoming president. From the viral prayer video on Thursday night to Obi standing physically inside Fayose's home on Saturday, the entire cycle took less than 48 hours. Reading Obi's response carefully. Let us look closely at exactly what Obi said during that visit, because the specific language he chose reveals a deliberate strategy, not just a friendly gesture. On the online attackers, Obi said directly, quote, "Half of the people that abuse you don't follow us. What they do, when they hire people, they carry them, call them all sorts of names." End quote. Notice precisely what that statement does. It does not defend the substance of Fayose meeting with Seyi Tinubu. It reframes the entire controversy as an external, manufactured attack carried out by people, Obi claims, who are not even genuinely part of his own movement. That is a specific strategic move. It protects Fayose without requiring Obi to explain or justify the underlying meeting itself. On accountability, Obi said, quote, "Anytime I'm doing something wrong, I want people to tell me so I can correct myself. A leader must always listen and learn." End quote. And further, quote, "My people will tell you one thing. The one thing I take is criticism. You can never be annoyed with anybody for saying I did something wrong." End quote. This is Obi positioning himself publicly as someone who welcomes internal criticism, which is a notably different posture from simply demanding loyalty. Why the visit itself was the actual message. Here is why the physical visit matters more than anything Obi actually said while he was there. A phone call, which happened first, is a private gesture that only the recipient can confirm took place. A public visit, filmed and shared by Fayose himself to a large following, is something else entirely. It is a message engineered specifically for public consumption. By choosing to physically travel to Fayose's residence rather than simply issuing a public statement of support from a distance, Obi's team understood precisely how serious this particular crack in the coalition was, and that resolving it required more than words. It required physical, filmed, undeniable proof of continued personal relationship. Revisiting Bwala's claim in light of what just happened. If you watched our earlier video, you know that Presidential Special Advisor Daniel Bwala alleged there was a silent political civil war happening inside the Obidient Movement, describing it as, in his words, a hate, vitriol, and unpatriotic movement whose own members were quietly abandoning it. At the time, we told you this claim rested on assertion rather than verified evidence. No named departures, no membership data, nothing beyond Bwala's own characterization. This entire Fayose episode gives us our first genuinely concrete test of that claim, and the result is more complicated than a simple confirmation or denial of Bwala's original assertion. On one hand, the episode does demonstrate real, documented internal tension inside Obi's coalition. Fayose, a prominent and long-standing supporter, genuinely threatened to distance himself, citing a specific grievance, feeling insufficiently appreciated despite years of sacrifice. That is not manufactured. It happened, in his own words, on video before Obi's intervention. Why this actually undercuts, not confirms, the civil war framing. Here is why this episode ultimately works against Bwala's specific characterization, even while confirming that internal tension is real. A genuine, uncontrollable civil war, as Bwala described it, would not be resolved by a single phone call and a single weekend visit from the movement's central figure. What we actually observed was a movement with a real, documented internal fault line that proved remarkably responsive to direct, personal, high-visibility intervention from Obi himself. That responsiveness is itself informative. It suggests Obi retains significant personal authority and goodwill within his coalition, enough that a public show of appreciation and accessibility, delivered quickly and visibly, could fully reverse a supporter's public threat to walk away within 48 hours. A coalition experiencing the kind of deep, structural, ideologically driven fracture Bwala described would not likely be repairable that quickly or that completely through personal relationship management alone. This episode looks less like evidence of civil war and more like evidence of a coalition that requires, and so far has received, active, hands-on maintenance from its central figure. There is also a structural lesson here worth connecting to our Cubana Chief Priest coverage. Cubana Chief Priest is a known public Tinubu supporter. His presence at the same gathering where Fayose prayed with Seyi Tinubu is precisely the kind of social and political network that exists across Nigerian public life, where celebrity, business, and political relationships frequently cross party lines in ways that do not always map neatly onto formal political loyalty. Fayose meeting Seyi Tinubu in a room that also included a known APC-aligned celebrity does not, on its own, prove financial compromise, as some of his online critics alleged. It may simply reflect the reality that prominent Nigerians across the political spectrum socialize, pray, and do business together, regardless of which presidential candidate they publicly support. Drop a comment right now and tell me honestly, do you think Obi's personal visit genuinely resolved this tension, or is it papered over for now and likely to resurface before 2027? I want your honest view. Being fair to the critics of this visit, let us present the strongest reasonable criticism of how Obi handled this, because it deserves a fair hearing, and some of Fayose's own online critics raised points worth taking seriously. One recurring criticism, visible directly in the public reaction to the visit, questioned the underlying priorities on display. One commenter asked pointedly how many people have died, implicitly questioning why a presidential candidate would prioritize a personal visit to smooth over a social media controversy involving a wealthy supporter, at a moment when Nigeria continues to face serious security crises, including the Oyo State kidnapping and the Omoku killings we have covered extensively on this channel. That criticism carries real weight. Visible, well-publicized acts of coalition management for a prominent individual supporter can appear disconnected from the more urgent security and economic crises actually facing the country. A second line of criticism, also visible in public reactions, questioned whether Obi's response reflected genuine conviction or simple political necessity. One commenter directly challenged Obi's posture, asking how he would respond to a genuinely powerful external actor exerting pressure if he was willing to personally visit and reassure a domestic supporter over a social media controversy this quickly. That is a fair question about consistency. Does Obi apply the same responsive, hands-on approach to larger strategic challenges facing his campaign, or specifically to public relations problems involving visible, well-connected individual supporters? Both of these criticisms deserve to be weighed honestly alongside the more favorable reading of Obi's actions. Responsive coalition management is a genuine political skill, and losing a supporter like Fayose publicly, especially amid the broader Bwala civil war narrative, carried real reputational risk for the campaign. But the specific optics of prioritizing this particular controversy, delivered with this much personal visibility and speed compared to the pace of the campaign's response to other arguably more consequential national issues, is a legitimate point of comparison worth Nigerians considering for themselves. 4 signals for the months ahead. Here is exactly what to watch as this specific episode and the broader coalition management story it represents continues to develop. The first signal is whether Fayose's renewed 100% obedient commitment actually holds through to the 2027 election, or whether similar tension resurfaces the next time he is seen publicly with figures aligned against Obi's campaign. A single successful reconciliation is a positive data point. A pattern of repeated threats and repeated personal interventions would suggest a more fragile underlying relationship than this episode alone can confirm. The second signal is whether Bwala or the presidency's communications team reference this episode directly in any future characterization of the Obidient Movement's internal state. Watch whether they cite it as evidence supporting their original civil war framing, or whether they quietly drop that specific narrative, given how quickly and visibly it was addressed. The third signal is whether other prominent Obidient Movement figures, following Fayose's pattern, publicly test the boundaries of their association with Obi's campaign through visible relationships with Tinubu-aligned figures, and whether Obi's team responds with the same rapid, personal intervention model demonstrated here. If this becomes Obi's established approach to coalition management, it tells us something important about how his campaign intends to hold together a broad, loosely structured movement through to January 2027. The fourth signal is whether Obi's team develops any response to the specific criticism raised in this episode, that visible personal attention to individual supporter controversies contrasts with less visible engagement on broader national crises. Watch whether the campaign works to demonstrate comparable responsiveness on security and economic issues in the weeks ahead, which would address the fairness of that criticism directly. Here is where this story leaves us. In under 48 hours, a viral controversy that fed directly into a broader narrative about internal Obidient Movement collapse was addressed through a phone call and a personal filmed visit from Peter Obi himself. Isaac Fayose reaffirmed his loyalty publicly and completely. This episode does not settle the larger question we raised in our earlier video, whether Daniel Bwala's silent civil war claim reflects genuine structural fracture or political messaging with limited evidentiary backing. What it does show, clearly and concretely, is that when tested by one specific, real, documented instance of internal tension, Obi's coalition proved highly responsive to direct personal intervention, not evidence of a movement collapsing beyond repair. Whether that pattern of rapid personnel management can scale to hold together a much larger and more diverse coalition through to January 2027, especially while facing legitimate questions about whether that same responsiveness extends to Nigeria's more urgent national crises, is the question this channel will keep watching closely. If this analysis gave you the full resolution to a story we started together, share it with one Nigerian who has been following this with us. Like this video, subscribe to ThePolicyPulseHQ, and tell me in the comments, did Obi's visit genuinely fix this or just delayed it? I will see you in the next one.